Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A Tagish woman who was jailed in Turkey was finally given the green light to return home more than 7 years since she last saw her family and friends. Our Sarah Connors witnessed their incredible reunion.
As her plane touches down in Whitehorse, Charmin Smith's family and friends are anxiously waiting for her arrival. After a few agonizing minutes, they were there to welcome her as her 7-year ordeal finally came to an end.
So happy. Yeah, I'm happy.
In 2016, the Carcross Tagish citizen was found guilty of trafficking the stimulant cat while on a layover in Turkey traveling to Canada. After spending almost a decade away from her home territory, the 43-year-old reunited with loved ones.
My feet are back on my soil, so I need to get going.
Smith has always maintained she was an unknowing drug mule. She claims the stimulant was planted in her luggage while traveling back to Canada from a conference in Africa. Originally sentenced to 9 years, Smith served time in a Turkish prison and was later put on probation.
It took me away from my family, my friends, my culture, my loved ones, and I was just because of one decision.
Friend Leslie Colley says Smith is loved and cherished by many.
To read her news the other day, it was, I'm coming home, let everyone know I'm coming home. That's such a gift in these times.
Facing a dire economic and medical situation in 2021, Smith appealed to the federal government so she could serve the remainder of her sentence in Canada through a prisoner transfer agreement. But that agreement never materialized before her release date.
They could have done a lot more, and they didn't.
Kim Bowden is the National Vice Chief of the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples, which has been helping Smith. He says government officials failed to help a First Nations woman facing uncertain circumstances.
Being a woman in Turkey is not an easy thing, especially if you're single, and some of the things that were happening to her was just quite shocking.
Now back in her beloved Yukon, Smith says her focus now will be on healing and spending time with loved ones.
I need recovery is what I need. And it's an emotional recovery, emotional journey that I'll be on next.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
O-Pipon-Na-Piwin Cree Nation and some local community groups have launched a lawsuit against Manitoba Hydro for what they call years of harm caused by the Churchill River Hydro Diversion Project. APTN's Leanne Sanders has more.
Manitoba Hydro completed the project in 1976. It raised the water level of southern Indian Lake by about 3 meters, and it flooded 837 square kilometers. According to OPCN Chief Shirley Ducharme, the diversion wiped out a successful commercial fishery and had a negative effect on the lives of some 1,100 people.
How can we continue to teach our, traditional ways and our cultures with we see continuous of our land washing away on a daily basis. So it's still very hurtful. It's a lifelong destruction, and you can't put money value and say this is compensation, and we can't accept it.
Chief Ducharme says they haven't put a dollar figure on the compensation they're seeking. The South Indian Lake Fishermen's Association said in the joint news release, the Manitoba government and Manitoba Hydro have succeeded in doing what the federal government and churches have not been able to do in the last 500 years, and that is the cultural, social, and economic genocide of the people. In an emailed statement, Manitoba Hydro said, quote, as this matter is before the courts, Manitoba Hydro will not provide any comment. Our statement of defense will be filed in due course. The claim by OPCN, the South Indian Lake Community Association, and the Fishermen's Association seeks compensation for damages and that Manitoba Hydro restore the ecological integrity of Southern Indian Lake. It was filed on May 19th. Manitoba Hydro has 20 days to respond. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
You can find more on that story on our website. A healing center in Quebec for incarcerated Indigenous men held a gathering recently to share the methods they have been developing for 30 years. Our Amelia Fournier has that story.
Now, since I've been on this healing journey, the one of the 7 sacred teachings, the one I'm most in depth with right now at this stage of my healing is honesty. Start with myself.
At 68 years old, and after over 20 years in prison, Doc is finishing his sentence at Wesseskin Healing Lodge, where he's gotten in touch with his emotions and his Mi'kmaq culture.
You would never seen these tears before. Because the life I lived, it was a sign of weakness in the world I came from.
Wesseskin is a healing center and minimum security prison 100 kilometers north of Montreal for Indigenous men. It's the only center of its kind west of Manitoba and incorporates elder teachings, healing circles, art, and traditional ceremonies that you can't find in conventional prisons, like the bear ceremony.
Bear ceremony is we let out all the hurt and pain, anger, frustration, all the garbage that people carry. We let it out into the ceremony by screaming or crying or, whatever you need to do.
Ralph White, a Mi'kmaq prisoner from Newfoundland, just got parole after 20 years in prison. He's now using Wesseskin as his halfway house and runs a healing circle for the other men.
You get to see what's inside, really dig deep and see what hurt and pain that you've gone through. Because you don't only hurt yourself, but sometimes you hurt others around you, right? Because of that pain.
Wesseskin recently hosted a gathering earlier this month to share their methods and philosophy. Workers from Correctional Services Canada, or CSC, parole officers, and community workers came together to network and learn.
What other resources do we think that we can tap into besides our friendship centers, employment opportunities, housing? You mentioned housing over there and things like that because of our high homelessness population, right?
My expectations. I'd like to collaborate.
Carrie Thompson, a Métis and Cree CSC agent in Ontario, has worked a lot with Wesseskin in her career. She says more healing lodges need to get built, and CSC needs to give
the opportunity for parole officers, the rest of the case management team to be able to experience the healing lodge, whether it's Wesseskin or whether our other healing lodges, to understand the work that's really done here, right? So it's not always correctional programming, it's more culture-based.
There are often long wait times to get into the program. Doc worked with Wesseskin for 5 years before he could be transferred there. Indigenous prisoners have to be classified as minimum security to attend Wesseskin. But in 2018, the Supreme Court said that the tool used to determine security classifications was discriminatory towards Indigenous people.
There is a formula that is used for non-Native people. If you're Asian, Caucasian, or Black, you get that formula. But if you're Native, they don't use that same formula. We have our own formula, which is way different than that formula.
Charlie Commando has worked with prisoners for decades. He says that despite the high demand for healing centers, Wesseskin is rarely at capacity.
They basically don't send us a whole lot of people over there. It's up and down. It goes back and forth. They nickel and dime us. They give us peanuts, but Correctional Services has everything to help them individuals but they don't help them.
The center depends on CSC to send them clients, and its funding is based on the amount of people registered. Carrie Thompson says that CSC's resources for Indigenous inmates are improving, but there is still a lot of work to do.
You can't heal within a prison setting, right? So it's one thing for the individuals to come down and meet with an elder or spiritual advisor, even in the Indigenous programming, kind of to drop those masks and have those interventions, but then they have to put that mask back on and go back to the range because they need to survive.
For men like Doc and Ralph, dropping that mask can change everything.
This place here with Sessions gave me more than I could ever ask for, more than I hoped for when I came here. Because it wasn't even just a sense of belonging, it gave me the sense of belief, you know? And the fact is, you know, the medicines are real, the medicines are strong.
Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Saint-Alphonse-Rodriguez, Quebec.
Indigenous peoples have been front and center at this year's Cannes Film Festival. We'll look at some of the fashion and the work being done in France after the break. Welcome back. Indigenous representation was on display at Cannes Film Festival in France for the premiere of director Martin Scorsese's film Killers of the Flower Moon. Tantu Cardinal and William Bello showcased a skirt designed by the Red Berry Women label and a tie designed by Yolanda Skelton. The film stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone. It examines the early 20th century Osage murders in Oklahoma, where more than 60 tribal members were killed for their land and oil. Can't believe we still have to wait another 5 months to see the film. Also at this year's Cannes Film Festival was the Indigenous Screen Office, who hosted the first ever International Indigenous Co-Production Forum. The ISO, which champions Indigenous screen content, was recently worried about future funding. Joining us now to talk about it all is ISO CEO Carrie Swanson. Carrie, thanks so much for being with us here. As we mentioned in the intro, you were at the Cannes Film Festival, which seemed like there was a who's who of Indigenous actors, producers, filmmakers there this year. Can you tell us about the Indigenous Screen Office's work while there?
Yeah, so the Indigenous Screen Office basically did a takeover this year of the Canadian Pavilion. So we worked with our partners at Telefilm and Ontario Creates, the provincial funder here. And we had a full day of Indigenous producers. There were 20 producers from around the world talking about how we can stimulate international co-productions between Indigenous peoples. So we had delegates from 8 from Canada, as well as delegates from Australia, New Zealand, Greenland, and Sami land in Northern Europe.
I think this is, one of the premier festivals over the last 30 years, ever since Pulp Fiction probably. What does it say to you that, there was so many Indigenous creators there?
Yeah, I mean, it shows it's an exciting time. There's a ton of momentum for Indigenous screen content, and our producers were there really engaging and taking up space in Cannes in a way that I don't think has really happened before. So it was really exciting to have that presence, and also to be that presence as Canada. So, one of the things we're saying as the ISO is that where Canada is present, we have that big national presence. We expect Indigenous Canada to be present as well. And, within that, we bring our colleagues and our peers, our cousins from the international Indigenous community as well.
Awesome stuff. Well, the Indigenous Screen Office has a lot going on. You've just announced a $1 million contribution to the building of a film and television production studio in Iqaluit. Can you tell us about that project?
Yes, we're so excited to support this project. It's our largest investment to date. And we we're first in funder for the building of a new studio. Red Marrow Productions is leading that project, and it allows them to shoot their new series, which is actually an APTN, CBC, and Netflix production. It allows them to shoot it in Iqaluit. Otherwise, they would have had to shoot in the south. So we're really proud to have been the first in funder. Our funding triggered a private investment in the studio and allowed it to go ahead.
Exciting stuff for Iqaluit and for all of us when that project comes out. You know, the ISO recently did speak up, though, about being on the edge of a funding cliff after being excluded from this year's federal budget. Can you tell us a bit about that and what would be lost without the ISO?
Yeah. A little bit of a frustrating experience. We have a 3-year contribution agreement with the federal government. ISO was actually founded with a shared mandate with the federal government to increase narrative sovereignty across this country. And we've done an incredible job building this organization and supporting Indigenous storytellers across the country. And we were expecting to have our contribution agreement renewed in the last budget. It wasn't. We are working very closely with Canadian Heritage. We're in ongoing dialogue, and I am confident that they're going to have a solution for us, an answer for us soon. So we're waiting on that. I don't think the ISO is going anywhere, but we're really saying to the government that we need terms that work for us, allow us the time to plan and to work in the way that we need to in order to ensure our continued success.
Good stuff, Carrie. Well, it's an exciting time for sure for the industry right now for Indigenous peoples. Appreciate you taking some of your time to speak with us about it.
Thank you so much.
The season finale of APTN Investigates is just a few minutes away. We'll talk to the reporter behind the dock after the break. Welcome back. Time for our photo of the day. From Fort McPherson, Northwest Territories, Mary Blake sent in this photo of the midnight sun. This is taken at 12:23 a.m. I would never sleep. Thanks, Mary. You can send us your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, sunny and 23 in Fredericton, sun's out and 21 for Halifax. 11 with showers in Kuujjuaq, 6 and cloud in Nain. Sunny and 27 for Montreal, 26 and sunny skies for Val-d'Or. 22 under the sun in Sault Ste. Marie and North Bay. In Northern Ontario, 22 and sunny in Thunder Bay, sun's out and 28 for Sioux Lookout. 18 with showers in God's Lake, 19 and rain in Norway House. 30 in Winnipeg, 21 with rain for Dauphin. Showers and 20 for Regina, 23 in North Battleford. Sunny and 23 for Buffalo Narrows and Meadow Lake. Over in northern Alberta, sunny and 25 for Fort Chip and Fort McMurray. 24 in Edmonton, showers and 24 for Lethbridge. 20 in Vancouver, rain and 28 in Kamloops. 23 for Prince George, sun's out and 20 in Smithers. 9 with rain in Old Crow, showers and 14 for Whitehorse. Rain and 20 for Yellowknife, cloudy and 16 in Norman Wells. +3 in Sax Harbor, 4 above for Polituck. +4 in Chesterfield, 6 in Whale Cove and Baker Lake. -4 in Resolute and Arctic Bay. False claims of Indigenous identity are the subject of tonight's season finale of APTN Investigates. Journalist Rob Smith joins us now from our Vancouver bureau to talk about his look into allegations of Pretendianism within the Algonquins of Ontario. Rob, great to have you with us. You have a story tonight about a controversial land claim, but it's more than that. Can you tell us what you found out?
Yeah, this story is almost an unbelievable story. It's a story about the Algonquin in Ontario. They are in a land claim right now for the past 20 some odd years, and they are concerned, legit Algonquins are concerned that their process has been overtaken by a large number of non-Algonquins. And one of the people that we talked to put it very elegantly that this is just a continuation of federal genocide on her people. So it is a story about genocide, land claims, and Pretendianism.
How did this come to be, Rob?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, and if you maybe saw some of my reactions to answers I was getting, it would make a pretty funny compilation. It's incredible. They began, what it sounds like they began by accepting people who could prove what they call a root ancestor. Now, this root ancestor could go back at least 200 to 300 years, and that would be the only connection to Algonquinism that they needed to then go forward as Algonquin. And what you saw at this point was communities kind of putting forward that they were old Algonquin communities. They weren't recognized registered First Nations at all. And they were accepted into this land claim process. Now, not all these communities we've got to be careful to say that some of these are very legit communities, non-status communities, and that's what they were going after. They wanted to go forward with all their people, the status and non-status First Nations, but in that process, it looks like there's a huge number of illegitimate claims to being real Algonquin. Some of the estimates are into the thousands.
Wow. So, Rob, what, if anything, can be done about this? Well,
they've recognized the problem. They've set up a tribunal. The organization has set up, the organization tasked with negotiating this land claim have set up a tribunal that's going to take a look at the legitimacy of these original root ancestors and see how much the current membership has used those root ancestors to claim Algonquin status. So that tribunal is going to be taking place over the summer. You would think that, especially if the estimates are true and we start getting into the thousands of illegitimate Algonquins who are making decisions on the future of Aboriginal rights in their community, that you'd think they'd put a stop to the land claim. But everybody I've talked to now seems to think the land claim will just continue on. There's an agreement in principle right now that will be voted on. So they're not at the final stages, but it's gotten pretty far into the land claim process. And they expect to have a final treaty done within the next year or two.
Well, Rob, looks good. Have the PVR set. Appreciate you talking to us about it.
All right, thanks.
You can catch the season finale of APTN Investigates Identity Check momentarily, as that's all the time we have for the news for this Friday. You can always find much more over on our website, though. That's aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.